Minasan konnichiwa, Dominic desu. Hello everyone, it is Dominic here, and today I'm going to be making a video on how to study Japanese. Don't know why I just did that, that was very dramatic. But along with what program did you go with, that is probably one of the most sort of requested things I get on my channel. And I get a lot of questions from you guys on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram. Thank you very much, by the way, for all these questions. I get way too excited whenever anyone messages me saying they want to study Japanese, but if you do and you ever need any help, I'm always here. I thought I'd make a video today explaining all of the best sort of ways of studying Japanese I have found over the last few years, because I've been studying Japanese now for like 6 years, and if I had known all of these things at the start, then it would have been a lot more useful and I would have probably been able to make a lot more progress. I had made a video in the past about how to study Japanese, but it was kind of bad. So I thought I would make a new one, which is what I'm doing today. So, with any language, you've got 4 sections: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And I think it's important to sort of cover all of these and to not neglect any, especially when you're self-teaching, because it's very easy to sort of get hung up on like the reading side and like the listening side and actually not end up doing any speaking. Because when you're self-teaching a language, it is very difficult to actually practice speaking with other people, and so you can kind of like forget it and just put the speaking thing to the side, when in reality speaking is just as important as any of the other components. But with this in mind, let's go with the tip things. So number one thing I'm going to say is start with hiragana and katakana. These are the two like syllabary alphabets, whatever you want to call them. They are like the basic writing systems of Japanese, which you need to learn. The quicker you learn these, the better. It took me, I think, about 2 weeks to learn them each, so in total about a month. I would definitely recommend you start learning these right from the start. Do not, just don't, please, I beg, do not learn Romaji. Just don't. Romaji is just literally the English way of writing Japanese words, and this is bad basically mainly because, well, I guess in real life Japanese isn't written like that, but also because it doesn't really teach you about the proper like pronunciation rules. There are people coming upstairs. But yeah, just generally the quicker you're able to get out of that mindset of thinking that you should write Japanese in Roman script, the better. Now when you're coming from zero Japanese, you're probably not going to really know where to start in terms of like learning grammar and vocab and all of that sort of jazz. And what I would suggest is, I've said in the past like I'm not really like a huge fan of textbooks, but there is an exception, and that is the Genki textbooks. Like, I can't argue with them, they're just so good. But yeah, Genki 1 and Genki 2 are probably like the most well-known textbooks for beginners Japanese, and for a good reason. They are very good books. They cover like everything you need to know in a good way. So I would start with those textbooks. That way you'll get to practice like learning the grammar, you'll get vocab. But yeah, Genki is a very good textbook for beginners. I would recommend you use that. If you don't want to pay for any textbooks, then literally there are like a million free resources online. I will put a link to some of them in the description. I use Tumblr quite a lot for like Japanese stuff. You have like loads of people on Tumblr learning Japanese, and they've always posted like great little links to study websites. It is a bit more complicated if you don't have any textbooks, just because like all the resources are like jumbled about everywhere, and you don't really have like a structure to the way you're learning a language. Because I feel like when you're learning Japanese, the most important thing really is that you have structure. Because like for me, I had no structure for like the first like 3 years, which is why it took me so long to study Japanese. So the quicker you're able to sort of build like a structured learning sort of system, the faster you're going to learn Japanese and the quicker you're going to improve. So what I also did for Japanese was I sort of followed the JLPT style of learning stuff. And I know some people like the JLPT, some people don't. Personally, I don't like the exam, but what I do like is the sort of resources that are available for JLPT, because it organizes everything very neatly in terms of like vocab lists, grammar lists, kanji, and who doesn't love structure? Am I right? So what I did was I started with the JLPT, and you can work your way through like N5. JLPT goes from N5 to N1. N5 being lowest, N5 being the lowest, and N1 being the highest. And so I would like go through all the vocab lists, learn vocab like that, etc, etc. When it comes to learning vocab, one of the sort of main ways that I would really recommend is to use spaced repetition. And in particular with spaced repetition, there is an app called Anki. What Anki is, it allows you to make vocabulary decks, and then if you're on your phone or on your computer, you test yourself basically, and it works out which words it hasn't tested you on recently, which words you know more, which words you know less, and based on that, some words will show up more than others. And this is a really, really good way to learn vocab. So you've got Anki, which is one of these things, and then you also have Memrise. Memrise is similar to Anki, except you sort of, rather than making the decks yourselves, you can download like pre-made decks. So what I always did was I would have to make vocab decks myself, vocab lists myself, where I put hundreds of words into a list and then put them in the app and then it would test me. But with Memrise, you don't have to do this yourself. You can download lists off the internet and this saves you a lot of time, especially if you're using books like Genki. What you can do is you can go on Memrise and you can download a vocab list for, I don't know, chapter 1. And then it will test you spaced repetition style, which is good. Another app I use is an app which is very conveniently called Japanese. It's an iOS app, it's free at the moment. When I bought it, I had to pay money when I bought this thing. It cost like £5 back in the day. It's free now, so there's literally no reason for you guys not to get this thing. This is like my #1 app, like the best app ever. I really wish they would pay me to promote their app, because I've introduced it to all my friends. Whenever anyone asks me about apps, I'm like, get the Japanese app, because this app is really, really good, I'm telling you. It has a built-in dictionary, it also has a listing, it also has searching up kanji, it has searching up everything. Just thinking about this app makes me so excited, I'm so excited about Japanese. But yeah, I low-key kind of lost track about what I was talking about. But yes, when it comes to vocab, spaced repetition is the way to go. Now, next, once you've covered the vocab side of things, you're learning the grammar, you're underway with your JLPT list and Genki, and everything is going great, you hit this next sort of block, which is kanji. Now, honestly, with kanji, there's not really that much I can say other than treat kanji the same way you treat vocabulary, in that you add it to you make vocab lists and you study it that way. Now, what I do with kanji is, it can be very confusing at the start, because you have kanji that have onyomi readings, you have kunyomi readings, some kanji have multiple readings, some of them I don't even, kanji can be crazy at the start when you have no idea what you're doing. And the way some people approach it is they will go and literally learn that this kanji is read this way and it's also read this way. And then they will go and learn some words. This is bad, don't do this. You're never going to be in a situation where you see a kanji like this and you think, aha, this kanji is hito, but it can also be read as jin or nin or hitori, or all the other readings it has. You never need to know that. What you just need to know is, you need to know words that use this kanji. Am I right? Who cares if it has multiple readings? That's unnecessary. So what I would always do is I would find the kanji and I would go and look at the dictionaries, and I would find the most common used words that use that kanji, and then I would add those to my vocab list, and that's how I would learn multiple different readings of the kanji. There's no point literally just studying 10 different readings of a kanji and not learning any words. If you can read something as nin or you can read something as hito, that doesn't really make much of a difference. What is important is that you know vocabulary that use those kanji. So yeah, that is my #1 tip for kanji. And again, with kanji, I follow JLPT style lists. I worked my way down from N5. I took the N2 last summer. My aim is to take the N1 next summer. So I'm currently studying the N1 kanji. I'm not studying any kanji at the moment, but shh. Next up on my list of things to cover today is, wait a sec, writing. Now with writing, imagine you're at that stage where you're starting to feel comfortable about forming your own sentences and you want to practice them, right? Right? Now the thing is, when you're self-studying, obviously you have no one there to check your Japanese, and you don't really have any way of confirming if what you're writing is correct or if it's completely wrong, right? So the sort of main thing I would recommend, oh my god, I can't speak English. The main thing I would recommend for this is a website called Lang8. Now what this is you write little entries in Japanese, and native Japanese speakers will come and correct you, and in return you go and correct Japanese people on their English, and it sort of works as an exchange thing where people help you, and in return you help other people. And I've been doing this basically the whole time I've been studying Japanese, since ages ago. I still use it even today when I'm writing things. This is a really, really, really good resource. I cannot recommend this for writing Japanese enough, because people will correct you, and a lot of the time they'll tell you where you're wrong and why it's wrong, instead of just putting a cross through it. And I found that helped me a lot, so I would definitely recommend Lang8. So far we've covered basic textbooks, and we've also covered kanji and vocab and writing, and next I'm going to be talking about reading. Now when you're a beginner, you're sort of confined to the limits of the textbooks and very basic things that you're learning, but eventually you're going to want to branch out and explore the rest of the world of Japanese things written in Japanese, because while the Genki textbooks I'm sure are very interesting, the sort of things that are written in them, you're going to want to explore out eventually, right? So one of the main ways I would sort of recommend doing this is either by reading manga in Japanese. So if you guys remember when I came back from Japan last year, I brought back a ton of manga with me. Admittedly, I've read hardly any of it, but still it's the thought that counts. And also by reading Japanese news articles, magazine articles, that sort of thing. Obviously, if you're a beginner, like some of these things aren't really going to be that accessible to you and that understandable at the moment. But what NHK has, they have an NHK News Easy website. Link, of course, will be in the description. And basically, this website is actually really good for sort of basic Japanese news articles. The type of vocab they use isn't too difficult, the kanji aren't too hard, and it has like the furigana above. So if you can't read kanji, you can read it in hiragana. This is a very, very useful resource for beginners of Japanese because obviously you're not going to be able to jump in straight to the deep end with really hard newspapers. Like, even I still can't read newspapers properly. So that is a good resource. If your Japanese is a little bit of a higher standard, you can then go and read, I don't know, like normal newspapers online, like the Asahi Shimbun or like NHK News Online. These are all things that I do at the moment, and whenever I come across a kanji I don't know, well, this is where the next resource comes in, which is basically a lifesaver, and this is Rikaikun. If you're on Chrome or if you're on Firefox, it's Rikaichan, I think. And what this is it's a plugin for your browser, and what it allows you to do is hover over any kanji and it will tell you the meaning of the kanji. This has basically saved my life millions of times. If you're ever reading anything in Japanese and you don't know what the kanji is, you can just turn on this little plugin, and instead of having to copy and paste the word into like jisho.org, the dictionary, what you can do is you just hover over the word and it will tell you the exact reading and it will tell you the meaning in English. Now, obviously this is a great resource because it saves you a lot of time when you're reading, but at the same time, don't become too dependent on it because real Japanese isn't like that. You can't just hover over a word in real life and it will just tell you what it means. And I know like sometimes it's very easy to become over dependent on these things, and sometimes because of this you don't actually learn anything new. So I would suggest is, you know, you do use this but don't like go crazy. Now next we're going to be talking about listening. Now this is probably one of my most favourite sort of parts to studying Japanese because it's the bit where you really have the most choice on what you can listen to. There's music, there's like anime, there are podcasts, there's like news online, like all these different things that you can interact with. My sort of main preferred methods, I guess, are music and anime. I don't really watch as much anime as I used to. I still do listen to quite a lot of Japanese music. Perfume. And when you're listening to this is basically just, it might not seem like work, and a lot of the time, to be honest, it really doesn't really count as anything, but it's good because you get exposure to the language, you get to hear it, you get to get used to different pronunciations and different intonations and different like styles of speaking, because when you're exposed to only one sort of voice in a textbook, you get used to that voice, and then when you hear something else, you're like, what the hell is this? But when you're exposed to like millions of different voices and accents and people speaking Japanese, then that really does help you get a wider understanding. So, listening to things in Japanese, that is good too. Now finally, I'm going to be talking about speaking, because speaking Japanese when you're self-teaching is hard. It is very difficult to practice and find partners to speak with. Like, you're not just going to be able to have conversations with yourself. Like, if you try doing that in public, people will think you're crazy. And what I'd say for speaking is this is the part where you're actually going to have to force yourself to go outside and like interact with people. So if you're one of those people who doesn't like interacting with people, then... But for speaking, what I would say is something like Hello Talk. These are great because it's like a language exchange sort of thing. You can like type to people in Japanese and like speak to them and all that sort of stuff. Make friends with Japanese people, and it's all great. That's one of the ways I'd suggest. What I would also suggest, and what I personally did, like I made loads of Japanese friends on like Twitter, on like Tumblr, and befriend people like that, and then you can practice speaking Japanese with them. And also I guess just going out into the real world, and if you find Japanese people, I make this sound like you're catching Japanese people like Pokemon. This sounds really bad. But like if you know Japanese people and like practice with them, obviously like if they don't want to practice with you, if they really don't like you, then you probably shouldn't speak to them. But most Japanese people are going to be really nice and they're going to be thrilled that you're learning the language, so they will want to practice with you, and you're going to get millions of opportunities to speak and stuff. Because if you don't speak, then you're not going to be able to improve as much as you can read kanji, or as much as vocab as you know, or as much as you understand. Speaking is probably, in my opinion, the hardest thing to actually improve on. Even for me, like I've spent time in Japan, I've studied Japanese for a long time, and I still feel like least confident with my speaking ability because I feel like that's the hardest one to improve. But yeah, just, I guess, speaking to Japanese people, making Japanese friends on like Twitter or Hello Talk, these are all great ways to interact with people, and these are ways that will genuinely help you improve your Japanese. So that is pretty much it for this video. I have covered a lot of different things today. Hopefully you guys know exactly how you can become like super fluent in Japanese in like a week. A week's not gonna happen, but you know what I mean. Hopefully this has been helpful. and you guys are now feeling especially motivated to go and study Japanese. If you have any more questions, then please do leave them in the comments box below, or if you want, you can message me on Instagram, on Twitter, you can send me a YouTube comment. All of these things I will reply to you. But thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you in my next one. Thanks. Bye bye!